Statistically, artists are left-leaning. What is conservative art? It doesn't really exist. Like a conservative red carpet, I implore you right now to go look up a conservative red carpet. They don't know how to dress. They don't know how to dress. I'm sorry, conservative people aren't funny. They don't make good art, period. Sure, there might be an example that you can prove me wrong, and I'm sure there is, but I don't care. Good art is made by good people, and far-right extremists are not good people. In the same way that far-left extremists, in my opinion, aren't good people either. But it is like the horseshoe theory where you have the right, the left, but the extremes come quite close together. They're not far off. Hello, welcome to my channel where I still don't know how the lights are supposed to work. I think that's too much. And that's too little, because then I'm all dark on that side. That's it. That's it. That's it. I don't know, girl. I got nothing. Hi, girly wigs. Welcome back to my channel. My name is David, and you are watching Dismantling Hate. And today, I hate my lip color. We are going to get into the video that is titled, Why Woke is Losing. So, bestie, are you woke like me? Because if you are, put that damn frappuccino down because we are losing. Oh, right. It's stained, so it's not gonna come off. Am I gonna need makeup remover? Oh my God. I put so much makeup remover on. Okay, I guess it is coming off. It is published by a channel that is called Spiked. I've never seen Spiked before. I don't know. It says, the magazine that wants to change the world as well as report on it for humanism, democracy, and freedom. It all seems great so far. I love all those things. I love humanism, I think, unless I don't know what that means. I love democracy because I do know what that means. And I love freedom. For freedom, yeah, very that. Love Simone. Ban nothing, question everything. And I think that could be used in a good way, in a good context, but I'm not sold that we're gonna find that good context here today. So the description of the video we're going to be reacting to today says, Francis Foster, love alliteration names, I'm so freaking jealous. Enea Fulrin Iman, Tom Slater, and Fraser Myers discuss how the Cass Review dealt a fatal blow to trans ideology and how Black Lives Matter came undone. We're gonna take a look at this 10-minute video and we'll just see why woke is losing because I'm tired of losing. No, I'm just making that joke because I don't think we're losing. I think we stay winning.
Well, you must have been misinformed then.
I'm gonna do my lip while you're watching the intro and then we're gonna get into it. Let's go. Okay, girls, this feels a lot better. This feels a lot better. I don't know. Does the lighting seem right to you? Is there something wrong with my makeup? Like, you will not offend me. Let me know in the comments. What's off? Is something off? Is it because I'm so pasty? The blue, like, looks weird because I already look better with the nice warm tone, you know? Because I'm red. I'm always red. That's not a straight line there, is it? Do I care? God damn it. This is how it went last time, though, because you keep trying to fix the lines, and then all of a sudden, you have the mouth of a sucker fish. Let's go.
So one of the things that people are clearly upset about, you see this in a lot of polling, is, I guess, you could broadly call it woke. The trans issue came up a lot in the US election, perhaps more than people expected. Do people have a sense that this year might be the one where things have really started to change? Because we haven't just had the election of Donald Trump, but also, you know, something like the Cass Review that seems to have really shone a light on the dangers of trans ideology. It's become almost...
Oh God, we're 30 seconds in. What is the frickin' Cass Review? The report describes what is known about young people who are seeking NHS support around their gender identity and sets out the recommended clinical approach to care and support they should expect, the interventions that should be available, and how services should be organized across the country. Now, I believe this is a UK doctor. So this looks quite simple to what is currently developing in my province in Alberta as well, where people are focused on the gender affirming care of trans kids and not even, but the trans teens seems to be where the most heated of debates takes place. And it's interesting because puberty blockers, which is the big thing in question, which just holds off the onset of puberty, puberty blockers are reversible. Hormones aren't. But puberty blockers are, and I didn't know that. I was taken by the right propaganda, thinking that puberty blockers weren't in fact reversible. I did look into that just a little bit, and yeah, you just stop taking puberty blockers, and then you go through puberty. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Let's keep going.
Socially acceptable to say that this is a bad thing. Francis, even on your podcast recently, we had the great Stephen Fry saying he doesn't support this stuff. And no, what have you made of that? Is there something shifting here?
I do think something has shifted. I mean, I watched a segment with Coleman Hughes and a few trans activists on CNN, and Coleman had brought up the Cass review, and for once, the trans activists were listening. Like when they were presented with something that was authoritative, evidence-based, it was very hard for them to really say much. I mean, some people would still do it anyway, but I just thought that the Cass review gave something authoritative, Hilary Cass herself, it's very hard to discredit her, although some people have tried to, but she's worked in this field for decades. She's a very respected person. I mean, in a way, it is a shame that it had to get to that point where, something for most people, I would say, is quite obvious that we should be extremely cautious giving children these kinds of drugs. But sadly, in the
yes, but we need to be critical of giving anybody drugs. We need to be critical of healthcare. We need to be informed and educated on the risks of everything. It's not exclusive to trans people, because the fact of the matter is the trans issue is just, what is it, a red herring? It's just this big thing that people can allude to of like, oh yeah, all those trans kids out there. Like there's not that many compared to how much conversation is happening about this group of people. There are so few actual trans kids who exist out in the world. So why are we picking on the issues of a few? Like it's nice that everybody's concerned. It's good. It's good that people are concerned, but it does take it down a bit of a weird obsessive level when we start doing all this other stuff, There's bigger fish to fry. It's almost like the Streisand effect, right? The more you talk about it and the more you make it seem salacious and inappropriate, the more these kids naturally will lean towards that thing. If transness just existed and it was like, yeah, some people are like that, I don't think people would be drawn to it as much potentially as they are now. Because if I was a kid in this timeline, I would be like, oh, wait, am I trans? Just because, everybody's you could see how that could work, right? So it's wild that it's gotten to this point. I just feel really reflective on it in this moment of, we're still here talking about this. Get over it. Anyway.
That we're in, that was needed. But also you mentioned Donald Trump. I mean, in his campaign he literally said that Kamala is for they them, and we are for you. I mean, this is really going quite hard on this gender ideology.
They spent most money on that, on those ads in the final weeks. That was where they poured their resources in. So obviously
exactly, and it was extremely effective. It really did cut through. And so
do we know that though? Also, I love his curls and her nails, and that there's alcohol sitting behind him. I'm pretty sure that's how you know it's good. Yeah.
Not only in 2016 when he didn't get the popular vote, he actually got the popular vote now. I think that shows that something really has shifted.
And Tom, I mean, for a long time people would try and say these issues don't matter. The culture war is just, silly people on the internet.
This issue does matter. And the culture war isn't just on the internet, even though the internet is a big piece of it. We see the culture war when we leave our homes and go out into public. But I do believe it is a distraction. I think we're weaker when we are pitted against each other.
That idea can now be put to bed.
No, absolutely. I mean, of course, the
Who's this guy?
electoral upsets we've seen in recent years can't be boiled down just to the culture war. There's obviously a lot of other concerns. The cost of living has been significant recently. Also, just a general sense that politics...
And if everybody's fighting over trans kids and their right to play soccer, then we're going to have less focus and inertia in fighting income inequality and the cost of living, etc.
Didn't really reflect their values, reflect their wishes, wasn't responsive to actually their concerns and the things that they wanted to happen in their respective countries. But it's a kind of through line, these cultural issues, isn't it? I mean, and also I think it's something that maps quite neatly onto the kind of class base of these electoral revolts, because it's in many respects this kind of elite identity politics is something that both implicitly and explicitly defines itself against the values of ordinary people. And what we're seeing is a rejection of that kind of woke ideology, something which is cutting across racial lines in the American electorate, but certainly it's something which unifies the kind of multiracial working class, because they certainly have a kind of, as well as having kind of similar economic interests, they've also got a similar cultural outlook. And that's something which was very well exploited by the Trump campaign.
Definitely. And sticking with race, actually, it's worth pointing out, I think this has been less commented on, but in a way, 2024 might have been a defeat for BLM. We started the year with the toppling
That's crazy to say the defeat of, right?
Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard, who, partly for plagiarism, but partly because she was allowing almost like woke Hamas support run amok in her university. And she was essentially exposed as a DEI hire. We've ended the year with Daniel Penny being exonerated. In 2020, it's not hard to see how his essentially leading to the death of a black man would have been turned quite easily into a BLM story, would have led to riots, huge protests, would have led to him being imprisoned. Have you noticed a shift on the race question, Francis?
Well, I'm glad you are.
And he's excited to answer too. So he's saying how he could see how the death of George Floyd would incite riots and a movement towards racial equality. Yes, absolutely. It's horrific that it had to take the loss of somebody's life in order for that to happen, but we've seen that throughout history, that unfortunately before moments of big change and organization among everybody, it often is at the expense of somebody who loses their life. What is he gonna say? Should we just hold a moment here for our inner peace before we listen to what this guy's gonna say?
Mate,
You are a person of colour from Latin. You're a Latinx.
I am Latinx. Okay. That is true. Well, actually, what I found very interesting is the paternalistic way the Democrats actually talk about Latin American people and saying, "Oh, you should vote for us." Now, if you know anything about Cuba or Venezuela, there is no way in hell any of those people are going to vote Democrat. They're just not, number one. Number two, it's really patronizing to think that just simply because you come from a certain culture or you have a certain level of melanin in your skin, you're immediately going to defer to voting for one particular party or another.
Okay, yeah, I can agree with that. It's really hard for me to move past their accents. It's even just watching the shapes of their mouths move is really distracting, but I'm going to focus for you, bestie. Don't worry.
And another thing that I found actually horrifically amusing was when, I can't remember the exact stat, black men voted for Trump, and then people in the Democrat Party came out and were saying that there's a problem with white supremacy in amongst black and Latino voters. Yeah. And at which point is it going to be that...
Well, because if you are voting for the man who I very unfortunately share initials with, what the hell, I didn't... Anyway, doesn't matter. Yeah, because there is a lot of white supremacist ideas that come out of those initials. Not with me, good Lord. But you can see how somebody voting against their own interest in favor of somebody who does promote white supremacy, that would be an interesting talking point, because I wonder how somebody... It's interesting to me, at least, or I would rather be interested in looking at the research behind the people who get motivated to vote against their own interests, because it does happen not only with black men voting for Trump, like he said here, but also people all over the world vote against their own interest, and it's through manipulation tactics. And I think we need to look at those a little bit more, and we need to understand more and get people educated. But if people are educated, then your capitalistic hellscape falls apart, and then there's no billionaires, which is tough for those big guys. They just like all their money.
Everyone a white... Are you a white supremacist?
Yeah, no, clearly. But I mean, even just on that point, I mean, when I think the Democrats were noticing that there was a shift taking place amongst black men, we can't forget that, Kamala Harris tried to appeal to black men by, encouraging them to sell marijuana, essentially. Yeah. And you had, Barack Obama, trying to be this kind of down with the kids guy.
He said the brothers were letting the side down.
Exactly. I mean, and, this is really treating people like in such an insulting way. And I think that
the way they're describing it does sound insulting. I don't know the source material of what they're referring to here. So.
Sort of, ethnic minorities clearly saw through that. But on top of that, I mean, even though this happened at the end of last year, I think October 7th also. Really challenged identity politics. I mean, the Chicago, I think, chapter of Black Lives Matter, soon after October 7th, put out paragliders in celebration. I think many people just saw that this is really, the terrifying conclusion of this kind of hierarchy of identity.
They put out paragliders for celebration. I have no idea what she's talking about.
Politics and where that can really get you. So I do think that the almost glorification about the sickening October 7th attacks also was a really big blow. And
October 7th attacks. I see. Okay. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas and several other Palestinian militant groups launched coordinated armed incursions from the Gaza Strip into the Gaza envelope of southern Israel, the first invasion of Israeli territory since the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, is what Wikipedia says. So it would be the Black Lives Matter organization in Chicago putting out paragliders in celebration of a Palestinian attack on Israeli territory. Because anybody can sit here and say that all war is bad war and that the bigger person doesn't retaliate and this and that. But I gotta say, if I was Palestinian, I would be celebrating the attack on the Israelis. I was. And if I was Israeli, I might be celebrating the attack on the Palestinians. So much of it is context specific on where we stand on these issues, but if you are not a part of either of those communities, of which I am not, it is hard to sit and educate yourself on all of those things, and I've spent time going through all of that, but I'm not going to have a nuanced understanding of the issues. The only information and knowledge that I know is from what is out there and what is published, and I don't know. It feels to me like one side is right. Anyway, this is all to say, it makes sense to me that this band of Black Lives Matter in Chicago were celebrating the first Israeli attack because we have seen so much violence, death, and destruction on Palestinian people. Is it right to create war and to attack people? No. Should it be celebrated? I don't know. Probably not. But would I celebrate if I was a part of that community? Probably. So I get it, but it's interesting.
Alerted people to the kinds of politics that was festering amongst many of these ideologies.
Yeah, exactly. And perhaps the common thread is that, you can't pretend anymore at the end of 2024 that, say, supporting trans rights is just about being nice to trans people. You can't pretend that supporting critical race theory or affirmative action is just about wanting equality. Those positions now stand exposed starkly for what they are and how regressive they are.
No, absolutely. And it's interesting. I don't know.
What? No. Sorry. Next.
You think that is Francis, because you've obviously spent a lot of time in the US recently. But that kind of cultural vibe shift that seems to have happened as well, Joe Rogan plumping for Trump, a lot of people who were in that kind of former liberal, anti-woke space deciding to move over a lot because of these cultural issues. Do you think that's...
Yeah, people like to move over, like Carrie Underwood choosing to sing at the inauguration because your career was flop Tina, marry somebody who's not getting as much attention, somebody who's not in the public eye anymore, somebody whose career has failed. Why wouldn't you go for Trump? It makes sense, right? Get your name out there. Any press is good press unless it's associated with somebody like that. No, I'm not going to reference me to mean him anymore because we're very different people. Woke can still mean just be nice. Just be nice, and I don't want to say stay in your own lane, but get a life. Like I make a podcast that nobody listens to. I do D-Talk with David Day. What a dumb plug. But this is just, and people are listening to this. Maybe I'm the dumb one. Who knows? Oh yeah, this feels like a nothing burger, but we got 3 minutes left.
Stick around.
I think the interesting thing, if you look at Trump, and if you take away the Republican brand, just look at the people who he's on the ticket with. Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat candidate for president. RFK Jr., former Dem. Elon, former Dem. you're looking at it, and Trump himself, who was a former Dem at one point, and you're looking at it and you're going, well, what actually you're seeing here isn't really right wing. What this is it's something else. It's a new phenomenon, and I think what's going to be interesting moving forward.
Extremism. That's the phenomenon.
Is are they going to be able to hold this broad coalition of people together? Or is it going to be too broad a church and they're going to break up once their own views come into play and also their own egos? So I think it's very interesting. Like Joe came out in support and loads of other comics. I think Theo did as well. But the reality is, I think what they saw it as was a new dawn of politics.
And but I guess, does it broaden things out for culture? You know, is it possibly more, we're going to see more, less woke on TV, less woke in Hollywood?
Like, I mean, what does woke mean in this context? Is he saying, like, are we going to see less trans people in TV? Are we going to see less gay people in TV, less drag queens on TV? Is that what he's saying? Or just the acceptance of those people? Or, like, are all of our TV shows going to be straight white men again back in the good old days? Like, what does that actually mean? You're just using this language that means something different to all of these people, but they're choosing to be ambiguous so that it's like a catch-all for everybody's racism or homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, all these things that people discriminate against for people that don't even have control over the thing. It's so stupid. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I don't like his curls anymore. His curls are dumb.
It's you hear stories about certain projects now being greenlit, which is bizarre. You know, if you think about it, it shouldn't matter who the president is in terms of what films get made or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think that a lot, because these things, are commissioned a couple of years in advance. We're probably going to get still a lot of, quite woke stuff on television and so on and so forth. In a sense, though.
And like, okay, in this way that they're talking about wokeness, meaning queerness, and in some way, I would assume that queerness makes up a good portion of this idea of woke. Hollywood is woke because creative people are woke. Statistically, artists are left-leaning because you need to have an open mind. You need to have critical thinking, discernment skills, empathy. You need to have those things. Like, what is conservative art? It doesn't really exist. Like a conservative red carpet. I implore you right now to go look up a conservative red carpet. They don't know how to dress. They don't know how to dress. I'm sorry, conservative people aren't funny. They don't make good art. Period. Sure, there might be an example that you can prove me wrong, and I'm sure there is, but I don't care. Good art is made by good people, and far-right extremists are not good people. In the same way that far-left extremists, in my opinion, aren't good people either. But it is like the horseshoe theory, where you have the right, the left, but the extremes come quite close together. They're not far off. There's a lot of hate going in all directions. It's not helping anybody. It's just, yeah. I don't know. I'm losing it here.
British establishment are probably like slower take up than the American one. And I think, many of us have, rightly been pointing out about the kind of importation of some elements of the explosive racial culture wars. But now we're seeing actually in America that this might actually end, to some extent quicker in terms of with the, the populace in power, so to speak. I think a lot of the kind of British establishment, still the liberal and progressives, are probably a bit slower to recognise, because you can see in the disdain and shock that almost seems more so sometimes in the UK media than in the US media.
But we haven't quite got the message from the imperial centre yet.
Exactly.
And when you see it, perhaps even worse in places like Ireland, Tom, these even smaller places that are still, in a way, they think they're very progressive, but perhaps they're behind the times by sticking with work.
Exactly. And Ireland's an interesting one because in terms of its sort of electoral politics, it hasn't had the kind of rupture, the kind of break that we might have thought of. But there was that referendum earlier in the year, the family and care referendums, this attempt to rewrite the Irish constitution, supposedly along more woke lines, and that was flatly rejected. It precipitated the fall of Leo Varadkar. So when given an opportunity to say, enough of this, it seems like voters across the piece are taking it, even if their political elites are slower to catch up.
That was really hard to watch. I don't know what just happened. I don't know who I am, but I just woke up with a different lip color on, so who knows, girl. For the love of God. Yeah, so in conclusion, the woke is losing because whatever. I don't know. Reasons, I guess. Anyway, girly wigs, that brings us to the end of this episode of Dismantling Hate. Thanks for getting all the way to the end. I appreciate you being here, because if you made it all the way to the end, this must mean quite a lot to you, and I appreciate you being here because it means a lot to me too. Now, if you're watching on my Dismantling Hate channel and you want more from me, you can subscribe to my David They channel. But if you're watching, oh, this is nice. If you're watching on my David They channel and want more Dismantling Hate or just Dismantling Hate, you can go to the Dismantling Hate channel. Should I say Dismantling Hate one more time? Are you new here? Let me know in the comments. I'd be really interested to know what you think about this episode. But yes, thanks for being here, besties, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.